How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the Fantasy Assessment. This is Season 2, Episode 10. My name is Rahul, and I'm joined, as always, by my great co-host, Jerry Wilkie and to Russell. Jerry, how you doing today, my man?
Hey, what's going on? I think it feels good to be back. It's been a little bit since we've been together or on, but yeah, it definitely feels good to be back. I feel so close to the screen.
I know with this little split screen view, I feel like it's a nice close up on our beautiful faces. To be fair, but yeah, we had a brief hiatus. This is of course a show that's every other Thursday, so when we miss a Thursday, it's almost a month in between. But glad to be back with both of you. Chu, how are you doing today?
Doing good. I mean, there's camp news. Nothing's really negative, and I mean, Bryce Young and Deontay Johnson are having a great connection, so I'm not upset.
Nothing's really negative besides Javonte Williams going from cut candidate to RB1 in the space of a day. It's just funny how these takes.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? It's funny how these takes have a life of their own in the lack of substantial news. But a great show in store for y'all. We thought we'd wrap up the recent Scott Fishbowl bonanza. Our last episode was a Scott Fishbowl scoring special, so now we thought we'd get right back into the conclusion of three of our drafts, maybe some slow drafts still going on, review our teams, go through our strategy, get some early player takes out, because guys, the season is right around the corner. I want to say 7 Sundays, 6 Sundays. I'm usually on Scott Hansen's Twitter because he keeps updating us. But very excited for to get right into this. But as always, let's go into our segment.
Fight!
And that is, of course, Choose Your Fighter, where we have a topic of the week and each of us presents our candidate to bring home the bacon. This week's question is, which NFL offense is being underdrafted for this upcoming season, whether ADP projections, however you choose to define that? I think it's a good question to answer, a month before redraft season perhaps kicks off. But let me go to you, Chu, first. Which offense is being underdrafted in your opinion?
Well, the first one that jumped out to me is the New England Patriots. And I don't mean the entire offense is underdrafted. I do think there's a couple of these players where I understand how they could tumble as far as they do. And of course, when we're looking at from a redraft perspective instead of dynasty, that makes it much tougher to be able to believe in some of these guys. But a couple of ones that I'm a bit intrigued in, Jalen Polk. I make no bones about the fact that I love him as a player. I think he's a tremendous receiver. And I think him going to New England, he is essentially the de facto number one. And whether it's Jacoby Brissett, who it seems to be, I assume he's going to at least be the starter for the season. And whether he loses the job or not, I'm not sure. But he's going to be the number one target. Javon Baker, I know, has battled some injury. Kendrick Bourne's coming back from an injury. So I think there's a lack of top tier pass catching talent on that offense, but I think Polk can get a tremendous amount of volume. And if we're looking at in terms of value, so he is currently going in about the 11th round, and I think that's just ridiculous in terms of he's going to be the number one target on the team. I'm not saying Brissett's incredible. I'm not saying the offense is incredible, but I think at value, that's someone who I'm really looking to get. And somebody else, I do like Hunter Henry, but I think he's valued, I think, pretty appropriately. But Ramondre Stevenson, so he's going in about the 7th round. He just got paid, and I know that doesn't just default and mean that he's going to produce, but how well he got paid. Antonio Gibson, who I'm a fan of as well, him going through a little bit of injuries throughout the camp as well. Ramondre Stevenson is going to be fed the ball because I don't think they trust this passing game enough to really let it fly. And I think with the defense being strong enough, I really think they're going to trust Pepper and Polk with targets, Hunter Henry being a good open field and red zone threat, and when in doubt, just hand it to Ramondre.
Simple as that. But yeah, I really like that shout and definitely way down the ADP. Let me ask you, Chu, what are your thoughts on Pop Douglas, actually? Because I generally see him go after in between the two rookies, in between Polk, but ahead of Javon Baker. How do you feel about Pop Douglas this season?
I think in terms of a fantasy option for the Patriots, I would slot him behind Polk, definitely ahead of Baker. I don't dislike Baker as a player. I know he went, a bit later than Polk did with the Patriots, but I think he's more of not a project in the sense of he's not a polished enough receiver, but I think with the skill sets they have there already, I think Pop Douglas has a better chance. I mean, he's going to be a starter, and I think he's proven himself pretty well in his first season. So I know it's a new coaching staff, but there's enough. There's got to be enough comfort in guys like Douglas and Henry and stuff that they keep them in the starting lineup and produce.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there, Jerry. Any thoughts on the Patriots offense, or feel free to go right into your offense you're highlighting?
No, that I mean the Ramondre Stevenson contract extension definitely made him rise up my boards a lot more. He's kind of in that zero RB range for redrafts and for dynasty. I mean, where they get him for 3-4 more years, so definitely somebody that I'm looking to acquire in dynasty leagues. So not too much of a fan of the wide receiver. I mean, somebody's got to catch the ball. Kendrick Bourne had a little bit of work before he got hurt, and he's been okay in a Patriots uniform. But yeah, Ramondre definitely is one that I like from them. I'm going with the Chargers. It's not going to be as fun and exciting as we've seen in recent years, but the quarterback is still the same quarterback, Justin Herbert. He's going at QB 15. I saw. We're in a draft right now. There's an 18-team draft. We're all in it together, and he's still on the board in that league. And to be fair, you don't technically have to start a quarterback in that league, but it is a super flex position. And he's still hanging around out there, and he's making $50-something million. I know it's a new coach, a run-heavy coach, but you're not going to just have Herbert hand the ball off 75 times a game. So definitely, I mean, and part of it's because his wide receivers really aren't that flashy. But even the three of those that I have listed on here, Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnston, and Ladd McConkey, the highest one is McConkey, the rookie at wide receiver 42. My favorite of the group is Joshua Palmer. He's got some Justin Herbert. I've been trying to just steal him everywhere. I might even have him in the Scott Fish when we get to that section. I don't remember if I grabbed him or not, but I've been trying to grab him everywhere that I can in any leagues that have been going on, best balls and we haven't redrafted yet, but best balls and dynasties and stuff like that. And I think that Palmer's going to be a decent. I think he has wide receiver 2 potential. He can get 115 targets and get 70 to 80 catches for 1,000 yards. I mean, that's not out of the possibility. Keenan Allen's obviously gone. Mike Williams is gone. Austin Eckler's gone. That's like 17,000 targets right there. So they're going to be spread out all over the place. And then being that it is a run-heavy team, they got the 2 guys coming over from Baltimore, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. They got Edwards at RB 41 and Dobbins at RB 51. Whether they split time or one has the advantage over the other, there's some value there. I mean, one of them should finish in the RB2 range, possibly even both of them, depending on how this Chargers offense goes. And then the last is tight end. Tight end's very questionable. The one that's listed first on their depth chart isn't even listed in the ADP. It's Will Dissly. My favorite of the 3 is probably Donald Parham at tight end 43, and he's 14 spots lower than Hayden Hurst at tight end 29. So I think that we're going to see a lot more tight ends kind of open up. I don't know if taking a Chargers one is really on my list of things to do, but I mean, there's definitely some value there. You're going to get some hit or miss weeks with those guys.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Palmer is really a favorite of the show. We've mentioned a few of our value episodes. I want to say a quick hi to Jamie and PJ in the chat. Jamie chiming in, or PJ chiming in with might be the worst RB room in the whole league on paper. Yeah, I could see that, but there's just much.
The coach definitely elevates it.
That has to be the key. Not just Harbaugh, but Greg Roman as well coming in. I think we actually just got some comments on Coach Speak Index, right? I was looking at them right before we came live, talking about the RB room. Gus Edwards is currently injured, so it was J.K. Dobbins and Jarrett Patterson actually mixing in the ones, and perhaps the darling of early rookie draft fantasy Twitter, Kimani Vidal, was running with the 2s. He had some words of praise for him. There's definitely value to be found there, because yeah, while maybe it's all doom and gloom for Herbert, they are still going to run the ball. I well, they are going to run the ball, but Herbert's probably not going to go down from like, league leading attempts to like 20 attempts or such. So I think a lot of value there. I agree with you, Jerry. So let me get right into my team. Oh, can we trust? I didn't mean to pull that up, but can we trust Hayden Hurst? Coach Peak Index actually seemed to think that he was going to be the pass catching tight end option. I do like the who's the big lad that you just mentioned at tight end?
Parham.
Parham, yeah. This guy seems to like catch his random touchdowns all all the time. I think he has like, I've seen him have games where it's like 2 receptions, 2 yards, 2 touchdowns. So definitely keep him in mind. The offense I want to highlight is the Seahawks, and maybe after like reviewing both of your suggestions, I was like, am I going too far up the board? But I do still think there is value to be had with a couple of these Seahawks options. Wide receivers, Metcalf, these are ADPs. Metcalf is going wide receiver 21, JSN 45, Lockett 51. This is kind of around where the trio finished. DK, and this is all in half PPR points per game. DK was wide receiver 20, Lockett 42, and JSN was wide receiver 60. We've talked about Ryan Grubb before on the show. This team should see a huge increase in not just in pass attempts, but like the pass scheme, I think will be a lot better. I think another thing that's really drawing me to the Seahawks now is they actually were amongst the bottom in plays per game, not just necessarily pace of play, which we expect to increase, but also they're just like their ability to convert on third down was extremely poor last season. Just a lot of drives were like stalling out right before that even started. I think a lot of room to grow for this offense. Kenneth Walker's RB16. I think that one's pretty fine. It's fair. Charbonnet 42, premium handcuff that will step into a 3-down role if Walker gets injured. I think JSN blows up this year. All right, guys. I'm going to go for perhaps my hottest take of the offseason, relative to like where these guys are going. Hottest take for a top 50 player, DK Metcalf, top 5. Yeah, that's how crazy it was to pull my headphones out. DK Metcalf, top 5 wide receiver this year. It's been quite a while since we've seen him push anywhere close to those numbers, but he has those elite wide receiver ceilings. That's like the prototypical build for, a high touchdown guy. This guy constantly leads or is amongst the top of the league in end zone targets. Surely at some point it should come good. But if I have to go for a hot take, that's the one. And the last one, I mean, we like Fant on the show, but tight end 25 is pretty fair. But Geno Smith at QB 23, I think it's a target for me in any and every Superflex league. I think we saw the worst of Geno last year, and if you look at his career, is that the Geno and the previous season was just an outlier? But I think if you really look at the metrics and Geno Smith, especially his deep ball completion, I think it fits very well with what Ryan Grubb wants to show. I actually expect a bounce back season from all of them. So I think I'm going to be targeting the Seahawks at their ADP. Chu or Jerry, I'll go to Chu first. Any thoughts on the Seahawks?
Yeah, I mean, that's a spicy one for DK. Although, I mean, it is tremendously touchdown dependent, but I think in terms of the volume that he gets and the yards he's able to produce, that's pretty consistent of what he can do. So it's not living and dying by the touchdown, but in terms of kind of being able to achieve that ceiling, that's kind of what it would be. But like you were saying, I do think that while last season for Geno was really one to forget, it was really one to forget only because of comparing it to the season prior.
Right.
Just the amount of the efficiency, the deep ball accuracy, just overall a very efficient and productive season. I do think he fades a little more, or I guess rises a little more towards not this last season, but the one before. I mean, to have the continuity with DK and Lockett, JSN's going into another season. As long as Lockett and DK are there, I don't think it's that JSN can't kind of rise to the second option. But I think there's a tremendous trust in Lockett and DK, and there's only so many targets to go around. We'll see what this offense looks like in terms of the rushing attack. Another year of Charbonnet, Walker, of course. So overall, I think this is going to be a much better offense, at least from an NFL perspective. I'm just curious to see from a fantasy perspective how that actually shakes out.
Yeah, it could end up being a whole lot of mid if they end up splitting those targets. But on Jason specifically, Jerry, how do you feel about him? I think my biggest concern is when you look at how he was used last year, an ADA of like literally like 1 yard, right? Like it was just so gross. How are you feeling about Jackson Smith and Jigba going in this year?
I love him a lot. I feel like him and a guy like Jameson Williams are kind of like in the same boat. I think we're going to see huge jumps from both of them. Obviously, with Jameson Williams, there's a better quarterback under center there in Detroit. But I mean, and PJ brought up a good point about will it be or will it be Geno or Howell? I think we can get a. I think we could see numbers boost up if it ends up being Howell, whether that's to start off the season or if Geno ends up getting benched and Howell comes in. So I mean, we could kind of have some hope there. Howell will sling the ball a lot, figure out where the Seahawks are going, and then maybe they're drafting somebody new in 2025. But I think we'd rather just hope that Howell wins the job and that'll just you'll get a lot more value out of all these pass catchers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Howell, a lot of people described his last season as just like empty calories because he was throwing the ball a lot, right? But that was Choose Your Fighter. Let us know in the comments what y'all think about our takes. And so let's get right into the show. So we're going to be reviewing our Scott Fishbowl drafts going in kind of chunks, rounds 1 through 5, 6 through 11, so on and so forth. Is going through some of the players that we took, the strategies that we tried to employ, players that we maybe higher than consensus on, maybe some that we regret, some maybe with a pick that we really wish we could have taken back. But I think this will be a very illuminating discussion into like how we approach what is really, a complex format with all the different scoring tweaks. So let me just pull up. And you'll have to excuse my constant technical issues. Oh, honestly, that wasn't too bad. Damn, am I gonna be able to make this larger? I'll probably.
So you could zoom the whole doc.
Dude, I just got this. I was telling y'all before the show that I just like got a new. I'm trying to get a new setup in. And I'm on a keyboard, but on the Mac, the control key doesn't work, so it's not like letting me zoom. Or I'm probably just incompetent. But anyway, that hopefully should at least have the first few picks on Jerry's team, and I'll figure it out in the background. But let's go through Jerry's. We'll call it rounds 1 through 5, where Jerry drafting from the 103 took CMC, Joe Burrow, Drake London, Chris Olave, and Nico Collins. Talk us through your strategy there, some picks that maybe you felt were values, players you're excited about, and what were you doing here?
All right. Well, obviously with round 1 went Christian McCaffrey. Can't go wrong there. I believe Allen went first, and then it was either Mahomes or Hurts. I don't remember, but it was definitely another quarterback that went first. It is a super flex league, but Scott Fishbowl, if you're not familiar, they do kind of dumb down quarterbacks a little bit. And they buff kickers too to help them. You can only start one kicker, but they do buff kickers, and that's why you might see some go a little bit earlier. Obviously, I took mine in round 21, playing in a dome with a top offense, but it's a super flex kicker and four regular flexes, one quarterback or one running back and one wide receiver, one tight end.
5 flexes actually.
5 flexes. Yeah. Oh, they're okay. Yeah, all right. Didn't zoom up. 5 flexes, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end. So obviously Christian McCaffrey, 103. I think I was really between just a quarterback or McCaffrey. I was thinking about Stroud at that point. Allen was, like I said, Allen was gone. He was the first one. That's the one that I know that was first overall. I don't remember who was second though. But I wasn't looking at really Mahomes. I wasn't looking at Hurts. So it was really McCaffrey. I wasn't really thinking about Jefferson either, or any of the wide receivers. And then obviously came back with Joe Burrow in the second round, got my QB1. If we're all throwing out some bold predictions this year, my bold prediction is, and it's not really fantasy related, but I think the Bengals win their Super Bowl this year. And I think that's going to be on the back of Joe Burrow. So I think we see a really good year, really healthy year out of Joe Burrow. One last ride with Higgins and Chase on the team. Well, Chase is going to be there, but one last ride with Higgins on the team. I think he has an excellent year. And then my third round pick and my fifth round pick, and it is third round reversal too, if you're not familiar. But my third round pick and my fifth round pick are two guys that am super high on this year. They could both end up being wide receiver ones. They should be the wide receiver ones for their respective teams, although Nico has a little bit more competition on his team. But they could both end up in back end wide receiver one in fantasy. Drake London and Nico Collins sandwiched in with a Chris Olave. I plan on starting the three of them plus even George Pickens with my sixth round. That's in the sixth. I plan on starting the four of them in all four of my flexes for pretty much most of the year, besides bye weeks and injuries. Those are going to be my four key pieces there.
Yeah, I mean, like, looks like a very, very strong start. I think Jerry might not have been there for our Scoff Fishbowl scoring episode, but Chu and I at least kind of poo-pooed wide receivers in this format. But it seriously looks like you got some great value, especially Nico Collins going as wide receiver 19. The end of the fifth seems like a steal, even with what we know about the scoring. So very strong start here. I think Joe Burrow too, and Chu, I'll go over your thoughts in here. We talked about, pocket QBs maybe being nerfed a little bit. You still feel good about Joe Burrow, QB8 at the back of the second round?
Honestly, I don't mind it at that value, considering I know the yardage has been nerfed, but it's still being the 6-point passing touchdown. I do think that, you have Higgins returning. I think some of the news kind of talking about, he signed the franchise tag. He ultimately wants to be there for his team. He knows after the season, he's going to be paid. So ultimately, he's out there to earn a contract. Jamar Chase, like all these guys, I think the thing's kind of aligning for him. Mike Gesicki, I think, is an interesting ad. At least for standalone value for him, it may not be tremendous for fantasy, but I think for a weapon for Joe Burrow, it's going to be fantastic. And I think in terms of wide receiver, I know kind of like what you said, we were talking about on the scoring piece of it. I know that's a bit of a drop off outside of, I think, the top 12, I want to say. Maybe you can extend it to the top 18. But the benefit of these first couple guys in London, Olave, and Nico, I think you can make a case for every one of them that they will be top 12. So I think if you're going to go for receivers, it's going to be early, and it's going to be those guys that are in the top 12, maybe extend it to 15 or so. So it's good that, if these are going to be your guys, these are the number one targets, and these are guys that could very well finish in the top 12.
No, that's definitely true. And Jerry, feel free to chime in here. But I think what we were saying really about the wide receivers is more that it dropped off way quicker than the other positions. So, which I guess going back to this format, usually you think that wide receivers so plentiful, but maybe here it's like almost like you have a lot of them, but like hero wide receiver, you want to hammer them when you're like sure of the wide receiver talent. I guess of those guys, tell me about George Pickens, Jerry. Why are you high on them for this year?
Well, Deontay Johnson is gone. I think they got a significant upgrade at quarterback, whether it's Fields or Russ. I think we're hoping for Russ, and we get a few years ago Russ, and not 2 years ago Russ. But and I know Pickens really isn't like a volume guy, but he should lead this team in targets, and he's going to pick up some of the Deontay Johnson slack. He's not going to be like a 160 target guy, but 130 is not impossible. And then double-digit touchdowns. So, I mean, he could definitely make some noise.
Yeah.
As long as they get the right quarterback there.
And which one is that going to be? Actually, Justin Fields was taking first-team reps today. You think he could? Well, because Russ was injured, to be fair, but do you think Fields gets a shot later on in the season?
I think it just depends on how Pittsburgh is doing as a whole. They got a third place schedule. I think they finished third in the North, or was it second? I don't remember what they finished. But they, Mike Tomlin has never been under 500, so I don't think he's going to be afraid to pull the trigger on replacing the quarterback if he feels the need to. And we'll just see what we get out of Russ first.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So let's switch over to Chu's team, and then bear with my needing to manually zoom this guy in. So Chu started off with CMC, Sam Laporta, Derrick Henry, Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel, and Alvin Kamara. first 6 picks. He was drafting from the 104. Talk us through your early round strategy, Chu.
Oh, much like with what Jerry was talking about. I mean, if CMC is going to fall, and this is, I guess, one pick later than when he was able to get him, and that was the one that I was hoping for him. I was really just thinking, if it's not CMC, I'll probably figure out a quarterback, because that would imply that one of the quarterbacks I would want probably fell.
Mm-hmm.
But that's who I wanted in this format, where we're talking about with the boost for for carries, for first downs, all that kind of stuff. CMC finished as the first place guy based on last year's stats with the Scott Fishbowl 14 scoring format. So when I looked at what we talked about in the other episode for the Scott Fishbowl scoring, I wanted to get the guys that I know are going to, bell cow is not really a thing as much anymore, but guys that I trust are going to be top 10, top 15, probably in the NFL in rushing attempts. Guys that I presume, if they're getting those sorts of attempts, they're likely going to be the ones that are getting, the third one, kind of punch it to get a first down, or God forbid if it's in the red zone. So guys that I think are going to incrementally, sneakily, if you will, really boost their stats and provide a high floor on most weeks. So I'm trying to ultimately fill a lot of my flex spots with running backs as much as I possibly can. Derrick Henry, I think, is going to be a tremendous value in this format. I think he's going to run all over the field. This is going to be the best team he's ever played on. And while Lamar, I understand, is a rushing threat himself, when it comes to the red zone, that's Derrick Henry's territory. And I think he's going to be tremendous there. Another thing I was tremendously excited to get, which it'll be a problem when they have their bye week, is the San Fran stack, which
yeah.
everywhere. It's best ball anywhere. I'm trying to get, the beauty of it is I'm okay if it's Brock Purdy and CMC, Brock Purdy and Debo. It really doesn't matter, in my opinion, Brock Purdy and Kittle. I think any of these weapons have certain weeks, and it's going to be tremendous. Being able to get Debo, in this format, only having to start one wide receiver, Debo, with kind of how my draft fell, I got him in the 5th round. That after that, I was going to be a bit concerned. If I waited any longer, I was going to be in that territory where I'm like, I don't think I can get a guy that's going to finish in the top 15. So then I'll probably wait even further. So I wanted to get Debo. I think he's going to have a big year. I think a healthy season of Debo, getting his rushing attempts. I think Ayuk is going to be back with all the drama, that kind of stuff. But Pearsall being added, of course, we'll talk about him a bit later in this, but I think he's going to complement what's been going on in San Fran. But I think this is still largely Debo and Ayuk getting the receiving volume. It's going to be hopefully a victory for me. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, PJ chiming in that the team need a little more stud receivers, but Jamie right there to say we only do need to start one wide receiver. It's a workable strategy to go kind of light on receiver and kind of just hammer that top tier. You'll see with my team when we get over it quickly that Deebo Samuel is also my wide receiver 1. But I really like that stack too, not just the Deebo stack, but also a Christian McCaffrey stack with what he can do in the pass game. And generally when you play in these big tournaments, it's kind of what you want to aim for. Jerry, any thoughts on choose start? Any players the picks you really like? Any players that you might have gone a different direction in?
No, I mean, obviously we went in with 2 different strategies, me going wide receiver heavy, him going running back heavy. And not just for like this specific draft, but like in general, anytime you do like a slow draft, I do feel like you kind of get thrown off your game a little bit. So it just sucks, like when you're up on the clock first thing in the morning, you wake up and you're like, oh, you feel like you're rushed that you have to make a pick. And I feel like I did that a couple times. Like I like my team overall. I feel like I did that a couple times. I don't know how you guys felt with doing that too. So I don't know if you felt like you got kind of not really bullied, but like pushed into picking a player that you didn't want, but you wanted to keep the draft moving. But yeah, overall, like from picks 1 through 6, I do like. I think Kamara, I'm a little iffy on. I don't think I have him in many leagues. Obviously I don't have him in this one because we saw my team. This is probably the only one that I really would question. But if we could get the Kamara that we know that we can get, then I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, definitely. So let me just go right over to my team. And I don't know, I keep going back and forth on whether I like this one. I'll probably do like 100, 1,000 drafts for my lifestyle and never build anything that looks like this. But my first 6 picks, I went with drafting from the 111. So I was super happy to start out with Anthony Richardson. Forgot to say, yeah, Jerry, I definitely felt a lot of pressure, especially being PST. I live in Los Angeles. And so when I'd wake up and I've already been on the clock for like 3-4 hours, and I'm like, yeah, like I just got to get this pick in. But yeah, I was drafted from the 111, started with AR, then to Kelsey, Jaden Daniels, Deebo Samuel was my wide receiver 1 as well. Joe Mixon, and then Rashid Shaheed was my 6th round pick. I maybe more in the mold of a choose strategy, really try to hammer the scoring settings as well. So with the 2 QBs, getting those guys that are just going to keep racking up the attempt numbers, not as dependent on passing yards. I don't even care if Anthony Richardson or Jaden Daniels averages less than 200 passing yards a game, because it really doesn't matter in this format. Something that really stood out to me when I reviewed last year's finished scores with this year's like scoring format, Justin Fields was still the QB5. He was still the 15th overall player in points per game, and he had a pretty terrible season. He didn't even have a great season from fantasy standards, regular scoring. So I thought if we could see a bit of that magic from Jaden Daniels. That's the one pick, though, that when I see how the rest of the team kind of shaped up, almost wish I went with like a Saquon Barkley, who was available at the 302, and then went immediately with the next pick. Yeah, Jamie, getting some spoilers in. That's the one pick, though. I was really just shooting for upside, and that's kind of where I went with the entire team. True, I think you put it perfectly. You put the case there perfectly for Deebo. A lot of upside again. I mean, who knows what could happen with Ayuk, but CMC, Deebo himself, but CMC, Kittle, not the pictures of perfect pictures of health. And then with Joe Mixon, and then you'll see with the rest of my team when we get there, I kind of try to keep hammering those steady running backs who will get a decent workload on good offenses. Rashid Shaheed at the 6'11", I was almost going to take him at the 502, to be honest, but when he came back to me at the 6'11", I have to smash. I'd seen him go in round 3 of some drafts. I mean, this is the 28th overall scoring player from last year's scoring, so I felt like that was a good value. Chu, any thoughts on the build I started with? I know it's kind of more what we discussed in the previous episode was the strategy, so except maybe not too early QBs, but any thoughts on my start here?
Well, I'll say this before I talk about the top 6 for you. What will really blow your mind is someone in my league picked Shaheed at the 112. So I'll just let that sit, and then we can come back and revisit it if we need to. But just wanted to let you know about that, because when everybody kept talking about like, oh yeah, how early did Rashid Shaheed go? I'm like, I'm either having like I either dreamt it or he straight up went at the 112. And I look back, no, it was the 112. Anyway, yeah. All right, so. Yeah, first of all, very good value on Shaheed. I can definitely understand what that window of, you could have picked him a round earlier. It wouldn't have been a reach. But the fact that you got to wait another round and you got to get Joe Mixon, who I think he's going to be what Joe Mixon has always been, another tremendous offense, a steady force. He's going to get those third down conversions, that kind of stuff. So overall, that's fantastic. Of course, getting Kelsey, another guy, that's who Mahomes trusts. I know it's getting new weapons in Hollywood Brown and Worthy, but Travis Kelsey is always going to be Travis Kelsey. Rich, I think that's a pretty tremendous value getting him at the back end of the first. I kind of can't believe he fell that far. So that's awesome. And I'm a little leery about Jaden Daniels, not in thinking that he can't, especially in this format, like you were talking about with Justin Fields. When you look at it from that perspective, I can see that range of outcome where he is in that top 10, top 12 as a quarterback, simply because of rushing, no matter really what he did passing yardage wise. But like we're talking about, I mean, passing yardage, it's not tremendously important. I mean, if he's rushing all over the field, maybe not as much in the red zone necessarily, but he's racking up those yards. And, depending on how the rest of the offense is doing, if he's getting a couple of those passing touchdowns, because, his tremendous deep ball touch, I think working with those couple of receivers, it's going to be fantastic. Deebo, I know we've talked about. And Yeah, that's the top 6. I won't go any deeper, I promise.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you pretty much there. I want to go with Jerry on Jaden Daniels specifically, but I mean, maybe I've just been drinking the Kool-Aid as the offseason has like progressed. Maybe too much with the rushing, but what is also jumping out to me about Jaden Daniels for fantasy football specifically is playing under Cliff Kingsbury, who, as we know, will employ like air raid offense, an offense that's going to just keep churning those plays out again and again. Expect them to, have a lot of offensive plays. Also, because this defense is Swiss cheese, right? Like they were gashed on the ground, they were gashed through the air. And, the worst thing to see when you're going up against your opponent is someone has, the 2 wide receivers playing against the Commanders D, right? So for me, it's just like they're gonna keep getting put on the field in situations where they're need to score, need to put up points, and that's just where maybe the volume will take over for Jaden Daniels for me. What do you think, Jerry? Jaden Daniels, not just necessarily in this format, but how are you projecting him for the 2024 season?
I'm kind of iffy on him in a redraft, and I disagree with. I mean, obviously last year the defense wasn't good, but the defense had a major overhaul in the offseason. Plus, they got Dan Quinn now there, so they're. I think the Commanders' defense is going to keep them in a lot of games and actually win them some games and end up third in the NFC North or NFC East. So I think that could hurt Daniels a little bit, but I do think Daniels is really talented. Getting him as your second quarterback obviously is not a bad move at all. When I first saw your team, I kind of had the eyebrows towards Rashid Shaheed as a 6th round pick, but then you look and it's wide receiver 26. So it looks like there was a ton of wide receivers taken between where you even took Debo and Shaheed. It looks like we all the 3 of us went with 3 different strategies too. I went wide receiver heavy, Chu went running back heavy, and then you kind of just played the system with the scoring and kind of went that way. My only comment is we're probably going to have to find a replacement for you because you don't have Christian McCaffrey.
I know I'm not part of the club, guys. And actually, what I thought you were going to bring up, and I did this to myself last year. I can't believe I did it again, but I drafted 2 quarterbacks with week 14 buys yet again. And especially, that's never good, right? But especially in Scott Fishbowl, where the playoff tournament starts, I think in week 12, I believe, 11, 12. That's like, what am I doing, man? But we'll have more to get into. But actually, that's kind of why I like comparing our teams in order here. And where the hell did it go? Because it does really highlight the different strategies we have. So jumping back to Jerry's team, just going through the rest of the left-hand side, Will Levis, David Njoku, Javonte Williams been in the news a lot. Jameson Williams and DeAndre Hopkins, what were you kind of going there? Just taking values, or do you have a strategy? Some players you're really high on, or what was your thinking here?
Yeah, a couple of the guys I'm really high on. I'm really high on Levis, really high. Well, I was at the time really high on Javonte. Now with the news going on, I mean, we finished this draft maybe a week and a half ago or so.
Yeah.
So back then, Javonte was still. I mean, training camps haven't started yet. And I mean, he still could be the guy. Maybe they just run him into the ground and then ship him off in the offseason, let him go hit free agency. But just kind of went with my got my running back 2 there with Javonte, because there really isn't huge threats behind him. Not that Javonte is a threat himself, but I mean, it's not like there's a real big stud behind him or even splitting time with him in Denver. That offense is probably going to be in shambles too. I mean, between Javonte and Cortland Sutton, those are really the only 2 guys that you really want. Or insert RB1 and Cortland Sutton, those are the only 2 guys that you really want. So as of right now, I think it's Javonte. J-Mo, I think he has a huge year. I think he, obviously being behind him on Ross St. Brown, he's not going to lead the team in targets or anything like that, but huge touchdown potential, big plays, big gains. And then I wanted to get a couple stacks there, so I ended up with DeAndre Hopkins and later on Tyler Boyd. So hopefully I get some of that Tennessee stack magic there.
Yeah, love all those names. Chu, any thoughts on this latter half of the first half, the second quarter of Jerry's team?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins stack. I think that's going to be one on certain weeks that could ultimately win you weeks
Mhm.
with what they showed with the deep ball last year. And in terms of Javante, he's the guy. I mean, this is his backfield this year. I know Jaleel McLaughlin. I mean, I'm a fan of his. I just don't think they do two very different things. And also Javante, I mean, is a good all around back. Audric Estime, a guy I like also, but realistically, I think he's hurt. But even once
Mhm.
healthy, I think he's going to be someone who can spell Javante, but I don't think he's someone that's just outright taking his job. And yeah, with JMO, the Detroit Lions, with how well they did last year, I think it's tremendously interesting that they really did nothing to shake up that wide receiver room that I can think of, because it's just Amon-Ra, J-Mo, and I believe Khalif Raymond is still there. So
Mhm.
uh, pretty interesting. I think that probably shows the confidence. I think when you look at two different wide receiver rooms, say you look in Baltimore, and you're like, yeah, they kept Rashad Bateman, and then Detroit, it's like, yeah, they still sticking with J-Mo. I have more faith in J-Mo than I do Bateman, and I think I'm hoping they can unlock J-Mo this year. I think between he and Amon-Ra, I think they complement each other very well in terms of the different skill sets that they bring. And I definitely trust in that Lions offense for sure.
Yeah, Chabo is one of the most polarizing players in kind of the fantasy dynasty like Twitter sphere. Again, with Coach Speak Index, if you guys are not following this Twitter account, you should, because not only do they post all the comments by the coaches and such, but they have all these like reliability meters like for like workload, for like lineup. It's really a great resource. And what they had posted in the last couple of days about JMO is the whole timeline of comments. And just starting from, if you just take this off season, there's a lot of positive chatter. Can you be skeptical? Yeah, it's fair to be skeptical about coach speak, but what this timeline really highlighted is Dan Campbell at every step of the way really, I think, to me, shows his honest thoughts. When JMO was not playing well, when he got suspended, when he got injured, Dan Campbell was there saying like he's not ready yet. He has to do this better. He has to do that better. So to see that tone change does give me a little bit more faith that this breakout could be there. And certainly the opportunity is there. This is a guy, I mean, Jerry picked him, so he definitely knows, but this guy in one play, could get 20 points, right? Like it's like that's your week is completely changed. But I really like that pick there. So let me go right back to choose team for the second quarter. Running back heavy, David Montgomery, Najee Harris, Geno Smith, who I also have, Devin Singletary, and Brian Robinson, just hammering the scoring strategy. Was that the thinking, or are there any of these players that are higher than consensus, or was it just I see carries, I want carries?
I looked at what I had to start in terms of, all right, what do I need to cover? What do I need to make sure? Again, honestly, once I got Debo, I was like, I'm just going to get some returners later, and I don't
Mhm.
really care. At the end of the day, with the amount of flex spots we have, and Rahul, I specifically had kept referring back to the charts that you had made in
Mhm.
terms of seeing. I literally had ranges of like, all right, at this point, we're at like the RB 20 something. How am I comparing that to this wide
Yeah.
receiver who's available? Like they're the wide receiver 18, but what do I think of the difference? Like, so it's kind of like using that chart, but then also kind of my mental projections of where do I think these guys are going to finish? And I mean, when I'm seeing guys like Brian Robinson, Devin Singletary, Najee Harris, David Montgomery, I feel like each of those guys, it's not a stretch to say they're going to get 200 carries, not even catches or targets or anything like that. That is in this format just what I want. These are not all of them are in tremendous offenses necessarily. Devin Singletary, I am a bit nervous that maybe just I'm just rookie fever that I think Tyron Tracy is going to take some work from him. But it's shockingly Singletary has shown that he can shoulder the load of a backfield. I don't know how long it can last, but we'll see what happens. Again, at this point, we're halfway through the draft, so I don't think these are real stretches or reaches to think like I get these guys and they maybe flame out or something. I think I've got plenty of other places that I hedge there. But Geno Smith, I'm now really annoyed that I had to pick him this early based on what I saw in the other one. But getting him, he's, of course, my only other quarterback here. I ended up getting sniped on Taysom Hill at one point. But Geno Smith is someone who, in this format, again, I'm not like, if he gets back to his more so older ways of his better season, a good efficient passer, good deep ball passer. I don't think it's it. I feel like his floor is 25 touchdowns. I think he can get 30 or close to it. Which again, 6-point passing touchdown would be tremendous. And I think in this one, once we get deep enough in the quarterbacks, I don't think it was a steep drop off necessarily, but with it can be super flex. So I'm comfortable starting Geno, but I mean, God forbid if certainly if it's a bye week or something, I have no problem starting just one of the quarterbacks and peppering in all the running backs and stuff. So overall, I think it's kind of like what we've talked about thus far. I just trust the high rushing attempt running backs, and I'll just figure it out after that.
Yeah, completely agree with it. And actually on Geno, you mentioned 25 passing touchdowns. Great shout out to, of course, going for 2 sponsor Underdog. You can use code GF2 to play, get some bonus cash. The line there for Geno Smith passing touchdowns is actually 22.5. So maybe an interesting one to hammer. But I want to come to you, Jerry, about these running back values. Just looking at Montgomery RB23, Najee 25, Singletary 33, Brian Robinson 37. Seems like just a couple picks after ADP. Great values here. What do you think about Chu's selection of picks?
Well, his 10th and 11th round pick are 2 of my favorite redraft running backs this year. Absolutely love Singletary and Brian Robinson. Not sure what their future holds beyond 2024, but I don't care in this league, and I don't care in redraft leagues. I think that, again, there's really no threat in New York to Singletary. Tyrone Tracy is a guy that's been going in rookie drafts late and just to get another body on their team, throwing him on the taxi. But we've seen what Singletary can do with a workload, and he's also coming in with a lot of tread left on the tires because Buffalo didn't use him that much when he was there. So I think that's an excellent pick there. I think you're going to be starting him more weeks than not. And then Brian Robinson with I can't remember his name. The dude that went off to New England, with him gone, Brian Robinson really has the backfield to himself now, and he's another guy that it was kind of iffy in the offseason. Well, still is the offseason. I'm kind of iffy at the beginning of the offseason of what I thought about Washington running backs. But I mean, I wanted one of them to just kind of take over the backfield, and I'm happy it was Brian Robinson because he is more of the ground and pound bruiser. And I think that's going to be I think it's an excellent pick, just those 2. Geno, I would take the under just on Underdog just because there is a threat of him being benched. This coaching staff isn't necessarily tied to him. I don't think this not coaching staff, but I don't think they paid him this year either. Did they? Was it this year or was it last year that they paid him?
Last year.
Okay, so yeah, this coaching staff isn't really tied to his contract or him. So, and they brought in Howell via trade, I believe, too. So that was for betting purposes, I would bet the under. But as far as like if you know that he's starting, it's a decent quarterback to superflex start.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I completely agree with you on Brian Robinson, but we must not forget that Austin Eckler is actually there too. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we're gonna get much out of old Austin at this point. So let's just go to my team. And David Montgomery was also my 7th round pick. I then took Xavier Worthy, Zach Moss, who I can't shut up about, Rashee Rice, and Ezekiel Elliott, just alternating back and forth. I mean, really similar strategies to Chu running backs. The one pick that I was honestly like looking back, Xavier Worthy, I don't know if I should have taken him there because there were still players like Zamir White and that kind of tier of running back still around. I think I got him at wide receiver 35. Not too bad. Thinking there is Worthy, what he showed in college, mentioned this on the show. I do think he's going to get a lot of return work, some schemed up touches there, and we know that boost. So I just wanted to get that kind of potential high ceiling play. Rashee Rice, again, with the wide receivers, really, wasn't happy with how I ended up alternating. Maybe I should have just hammered the running backs there. But again, Rashee Rice, I just thought, wide receiver 43, like it's a bet that he doesn't get suspended this year. I think then he'd far outperform that at ADP, and I kind of like having that don't have Mahomes, but I have Kelsey, Worthy, and Rashid Rice. So that Chiefs passing game exposure. Finishing up with Ezekiel Elliott, that's my second most rostered player right now on Underdog. But true, maybe you see the vision. Hopefully, what do you think about my round 7 through 11?
I mean, much like I kept talking about these guys that I think are going to get the 200 touches. I mean, if you look at Montgomery, of course, obviously I agree because I drafted him. Zach Moss, I think he's going to be a sneaky one. I think it does help that he is strong in pass pro, so I think he works well in this offense, but I do think he's going to get a lion's share of the ground game. And that's more so because I think Zach Moss and Chase Brown are more of kind of like a thunder and lightning type of combo than they are similar, which I think is good for the offense as a whole. And yeah, Ezekiel Elliott, which I know we can talk about the right column that you got his handcuff there, but I mean, we know what the passing offense is going to look like. Again, we assume CD Lamb's going to get paid and or show up at some point. Jake Ferguson, another good pass catcher. Brandon Cooks, I think it's going to be a sneaky ad for a lot of people. But I mean, between that, I know if you're going to pick two receivers on the same team, I think there's with Worthy and Rice, you're going to be picking two guys that are on one of the, if not the best passing offenses. I know on a week-to-week basis, it may be kind of, we don't know where it's going to fall. But I think maybe as we get into the season, we can kind of see, like you said, what happens with Rashid Rice of a suspension or not. And for Worthy, is it him getting some return work to where no matter how, if he's only getting a handful of targets on a week-to-week basis and you don't know when he's going to get a touchdown, if he's also getting the return work, you can confidently put him in as a flex or as a starting wide receiver and know that you have a floor when he gets return work. And then when he actually gets a receiving touchdown, that's just a huge boom week. I'm saying that those are the kinds of players that Shaheed and Worthy are the sneaky ones where they're actually starting receivers or getting enough work there, but they're going to get return work.
You saw the vision, Chu. You saw the vision. But yeah, I mean, just before we go on to Jerry's team, really my strategy, and I mean, hopefully you can tell from kind of the picks that I've made, just keep hammering those good offenses, right? Like, I mean, Jaden Daniels aside, everyone on the first half of my team is an offense that I'm really excited to watch in this upcoming season. And yeah, right down to Ezekiel Elliott and then Rico Dowdle, who we'll talk about the next half. It's just Cowboys right now projected top 3, top 5 scoring in the NFL. Someone is going to get that work. So why not take 2 shots at it? But yeah, let's get right into Jerry, the latter half of your team. And interest of time, maybe we'll just go through the second half as a whole. So rounds 12 to 22, tell us about your strategy and then highlight a few players that you're really excited about the pick you made, thought you got a good value.
All right, that one's not my team. It's the other one.
Oh, yep.
We can talk about my team, of course.
There we go. Let me resize this guy so we can see those last names.
All right. So obviously got my third quarterback, Bryce Young. They've made a lot of upgrades this year on the offensive line and brought in a couple of guys, including a first-round wide receiver, and traded for Deontay Johnson. So I just think, I mean, rookie last year, I think he has a much better year too. I don't have to start him really at all unless it's bye weeks or if I see that improvement. But it's nice to have him there and then not have to worry about another quarterback for the rest of the draft. You touched on Zach Charbonnet a little bit in the pick your fighter, so don't really have to go too much into that. Kate Otten is a tight end that I really high on this year. There's a lot of we've seen Baker Mayfield last year. They got a lot of pass catchers over there, so I think he's going to get his fair share of that. And this is the area where I wanted to start targeting the return guys. I had 2 on my list. Both of them, unfortunately, were taken, though, so I really didn't get to kind of take advantage of that in this draft at all because I really don't have anybody on there. But the guys I was looking at was Marvin Mims and Khalil Shakir. Obviously, didn't end up with either of them. So then I just pivoted to just grabbing just guys that I think can have some value or just upside, like Gabe Davis. He got that big contract. Alexander Madison. Really, like everybody's on Zamir White, but they brought in Madison this offseason. It could be a 1-2 punch. It could be a Madison has a bulk of the carries, or Madison could just be a waste of a pick right there and might just be Zamir White. Who knows? Michael Wilson is another guy that I'm high on. There's Kyler Murray is. I think Kyler Murray is going to just jump back into a huge year. They got Marvin Harrison Jr. there. Michael Wilson should at least get the second or third most. Well, obviously with the tight end there, so maybe not the second or third most, but he should get a decent number of touches. Roshan Johnson, just to make Jamie happy. I know we were talking about him. and then yeah, I got my kicker and Young Ho Koo with they plays in a dome, number one. They got the kicker, not bonuses, but like the kickers are buffed in this league, and you also have high powered offense with Kirk Cousins, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. So we should get some kicking opportunities. He's one of my top kickers there. And then yeah, just a couple shots in the dark with Tyler Boyd, Donta Foreman, Colby Parkinson.
Yeah, love it. I'm gonna ask Chu who your two favorite picks here from for Jerry's latter half. I'm gonna ask two because number one I know is Colby Parkinson. But yeah, what's your read on Jerry's latter half of his team?
Parkinson's an absolute all-star. I'll just start there. No, I mean, if I skip Parkinson, which I will just for the sake of this exercise, two ones that I like outside of him, Gabe Davis, I do think he's going to step into a beefed-up Zay Jones role. I'm not a huge believer in Brian Thomas Jr. in the sense that he's going to step in and be the one. I do think he could have a defined role. I just don't think it's going to maybe be what a lot of people have been saying it may be. And another one that I think is a tremendous value is Donta Foreman. I mean, sincerely, the last pick for you in the 22nd round. And what we've seen with Chubb, the uncertainty there. I mean, Jerome Ford definitely showed what he can do last year. So I'm not saying that he's an afterthought necessarily. But Donta Foreman, likewise, has also shown what he can do since he's come back from his injury. God, maybe 4 years ago now at this point.
Yeah.
He's made that an afterthought, performing very well on a number of different teams, including my Carolina Panthers. So I think he's going to be a sneaky one where when you're getting the depth of running backs that may or may not get a chance, he seems like someone who maybe even if it's just for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think he's going to be someone that slides into the starting roster.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Yeah, great value really in the 22nd round, and especially the profile too. I think we're kind of like pricing in Nick Chubb not to be ready to start the year, even if Jerome Ford is like the de facto lead back. What we saw with Ford and Hunt splitting is Hunt was actually taking the lion's share of the carries and the short yardage, the first down, the touchdowns, and Ford was always doing that kind of like quasi like passing role. So really love that pick there from you, Jamie. Jerry. These J names with 2 syllables keep getting me. But let's go right over to Chu's team. A lot of returners I can see coming up here. But yeah, what was your strategy from rounds 12 onwards?
Well, we had a lot of blue on the left side of this thing, so I figured if I have Debo, I feel comfortable in that. But I do understand he's had his health concerns. So I did also miss out on, the Marvin Mims. He was the main one who I was looking to get as a returner, wide receiver 2-3. Mm-hmm. But the one that I really wanted to get, and I kind of can't believe he fell this far, is Josh Downs. He's someone who A.D. Mitchell, that does not affect what Josh Downs is doing. Even with Jelani Woods coming back, and I would presume he's going to be the starting tight end, still doesn't really affect what Downs is going to do as a receiver. And he's, of course, a returner. He's going to get that work. And you can see that trend there, me getting Downs, Gibson, despite what they've added there in New York. I do still think he's going to get some work as the out of the slot, but he did work a bit on the outside, which is pretty shocking counter to body type of Mike Williams. But we'll see how that goes. Ricky Pearsall, I think he's starting either on the pup or he's at least injured at the moment. He's someone who he did return work, both punt and kick in college. I don't know that that's going to translate to the same thing in San Fran with the number of weapons they have there. Greg Dortch, of course, a returner and another guy that's going to get some starting work there. Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Washington. Wan'Dale's just a guy I like. I do think he's going to be a sneaky play, even in redraft, depending on how deep the leagues are. Malik Washington, similar to Jalen Polk, as we talked about earlier in the episode, I just believe in Malik Washington. Again, he had return work at UVA in his historic season. And again, they have a number of explosive weapons on Miami. He may or may not get that work, but in the 21st round, I'm fine taking that shot.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I clearly did not get the CMC Parkinson Madison memo, so I am
The
registering
trifecta.
registering my protest. But yeah, Jerry, any picks that stand out to you here that you really like of Choose?
Wandale Robinson, probably. I think this is a make or break year um, for Daniel Jones, and even if Daniel Jones gets benched, at least they got somebody with starting experience and Drew Lock to come in, and he should be especially with Darren Waller retired too, he should be the guy that would work a little bit more of the middle. Malik Neighbors, obviously a rookie, is probably going to be the wide receiver one, at least in the future. Who knows about this year? But Wandale Robinson, I think it's a make or break year for him, make or break year for Daniel Jones. Just a lot of stuff has to happen for the Giants, or they're going to be in a completely different direction next year.
Yeah, definitely hear you on that. So with that, let me go to my team. And it's funny that PJ and Jamie, I kept seeing them chatting about rookie running backs in the chat. I mean, I think I took everyone that they didn't mention, but yeah, went right back to the running back well to start off with Blake Corum, Rico Dowdle to complete that backfield, Marshawn Lloyd, Ray Davis again, just taking these bigger running backs who expect to get some carries at least on good offenses was the strategy there. Geno Smith, for me, the interesting one is I took him at QB 32 in the 13th round compared to where Chu got him. So that honestly a shocking disparity. I think there's no way Geno Smith should be falling to QB 32, right? When there are 32 starting QBs in the league. But then after that, kind of just took my shots in some players again. You can probably tell that I was really leading into the scoring of Scott Fishbowl, but likely in Jonnu Smith with the tight end boost, Kavonte Turpin, Khalif Raymond for the returners. Sneaky little Trace Sermon action in there right now, penciled in as the number 2 back on the Indianapolis Colts. And then Jason Sanders is my kicker. But yeah, like really just reiterating my first half of my team is just target these good offenses, target the carries. Really got priced out of some of the returners that I had my eye on, especially Greg Dortch, one of my favorite hype trains this offseason. But weird team, eclectic, but pretty happy with how it turned out in the end. Chu, any picks that stand out to you?
Geno, first of all, it is asinine that he was the cute quarterback. Like, they don't even know who's going to start in Vegas, and you're going to tell me they think Geno is going to finish after whoever that is? That's crazy to me. But outside of that, I mean, yeah, getting a Kavonte Turpin, Khalif Raymond, I think I realize I'm picking that the best picks are the 22nd round for you and for Jerry, but I mean, Khalif Raymond, much like some of these guys, like the Greg Dortch and some of these guys that, they're the slot or the third option, or maybe even fourth if you're counting certain tight ends and stuff on their teams. But much like we were talking about in Detroit, there was not really any additions or anything like that as pass catchers. Raymond's been there a while, and he's had a few games here and there, but I think in this scoring format, you talked about the return work and everything. I mean, he's a steady veteran, and again, if for some reason you're going to need to plug him in, even if it's at a flex for certain bye weeks, that sort of thing, I think that's going to be a good thing to have.
Yeah, and it's almost like a hedge on JMO, who has had his fair share of injury trouble in the past. Of course, like such a speedster, it's no surprise. But really, with my last pick, I was like, do I go with Khalif Raymond, who's been there, or do I go with Donovan Peoples-Jones, who actually got traded from the Browns to the Lions and has done punt return work in the past? In the end, went with Khalif Raymond. But very interesting team. I think that's all we have for you on the Scott Fishbowl. Thank you all for being here for an hour. Definitely had a great time going over all your both of your teams and really seeing that difference in strategy, the similarities and the differences in strategies, how we approached it. Jerry, any last words for the people before we sign off here?
No, just keep up with us every other Thursday. Should be more consistent going into the regular season, and just check us out on Facebook and on the Discord.
Yeah. Chu, last words to the people.
Glad to be back into the swing of things with you guys, and I'll just end it with shout out to Colby Parkinson if you're listening.
Chu ranked him at tight end 15. And again, not to keep harping on Coach Speak Index, but this might have been from Jordan Rodrigue, who's a Rams beat reporter, but she was talking about how Rams might even amp up their 12 personnel, and Colby Parkinson figures to be very, very involved. So tight end 15 might seem even a little bit of an underestimate there. But yeah, my name is Rahul. You can catch my work at Small Talk FF. Jerry and I will actually be on Jeff's show, Armchair Fantasy Show, upcoming Wednesday to do NFC and AFC West preview. Very excited for that. And of course, the fantasy assessment, one-stop shop for advice tailored to your teams. This time it was our teams. We will be here every other Thursday and hopefully ramping up